So that's our status bar sorted out. We'll now create some basic objects. I'll talk to you about the Cartesian system. If I was to create a line, for example, then the line tool is up there. I could also hit L and enter on the keyboard. And because my dynamic input is not turned on, I'm not getting any feedback from the screen. So I'll turn that on and now I get feedback on the screen. So specify first point, and the first point is always relative to the origin. So if I was to type in 0, 0, enter, then that's going to put my first point at the origin point. Then I've got some choices. I can move it to a specific angle. So because I've got the 30-degree polar track set, I can set it to 30 or 60 degrees or 90 degrees and leave it on that track line. Now, regardless of whether it says 30 or not, unless you're seeing that track line, it's not probably on 30 degrees. And then I could enter a value, say 150, and that's in the box, and then hit enter, and that's going to give me a line 150 mil 30 degrees up from this horizontal line. The x-axis is the start of everything, and it moves in this anti-clockwise direction. So all the angles are reading anti-clockwise around the screen. So that's how to draw a line. So it's click and click, but you could also draw a line from the end of this point and then come down whatever 30 degrees at 150, enter, and that should take your line back down to this x-axis. Okay, so I could also draw a line from the end point of that or from the midpoint of this. And because I've got my extension snap set, it's also extending out beyond it as well. So again, you've got to be kind of aware of what's going on, and I'll just show you what happens with these track points. If I hover over something, I'll get rid of them. If I hover over it for about sort of half a second, it leaves behind a little green cross. I'll have that one there, I'll have this one there, I'll put that one there, and I'll put this one on the origin point. So I've got 5 of them at the moment, and they're doing all sorts of things, allowing me to sort of track and intersect points. If I want to get rid of them, I hover back over them and they disappear. Okay, so hover over to set, hover over to unset. If I was to draw a circle, then I can pick this point as my end point and then drag out a radius. So that's the standard sort of creation of a circle. That's the default mode of creating a circle. I've also got 5 other options. So by center diameter, so choose that one, and center, and that's the diameter value going in there. I've also got 2 point, so 1 point and 2 point, 3 point, 1 point, 2 points, and then maybe 3 points. Find something that I can align to. There you go, it'll do. 3 points. I've then got tan radius, so the tangent of this, the tangent of that, and a 150 radius. That gives me that curve. And I've also got the final option, tan. So tangent, tangent, tangent. That pops the circle in at that point there. So nice ways to create circles. Now if I just decided to hit the enter key to call up the previous command, I'm going to get back to, even though it's showing tan, I'm back to circle radius. That's the default input method of the circle. So if I wanted this tan, I'd have to go back and click on this icon to do tan. Arcs. Thought there was enough 6 methods to create a circle, then you've got a lot more methods to create arcs. Again, I've gone through videos trying to explain all these different methods. 3 point is fairly obvious. Continue is fairly useful. Gives you a nice sort of tangent arc from the end of that. So continue. And again, if I hit enter, I just go back to the 3 point arc creation method. So that's the continue arc. All the other ones sort of relate to the direction in which you start, the chord length, the angle. Rectangle, 2 clicks, 1, 2. So again, you don't have to give a value, but if I wanted to start my first corner point at 100, 100, then it starts 100 across and 100 up from the origin point there. And then the second value is the size of it. So 150, 100. It's always x first. So x direction, then the y direction. If I entered a negative x direction value, it would have gone backwards. Okay, so that's something else that you can do. I'll start my rectangle that way. Now I'm going in this negative value, so you're seeing the negative x value appear there. So negative 150, 100. It's gone back that way. So positive, negative, and the z-axis coming straight at you. Moving objects, then I'll select the tool. So there's two different ways in which you can move or select or do anything with an object. You either choose the icon first, pre-select the icon, then you have to select the object, and then say I want two objects. I can click both, then I hit enter. That's my selection set done. Then I can click somewhere and move those objects somewhere else. Alternatively, I can select the object and then call up the move tool, and that's pre-selected, and I can pick that up and move that maybe to the origin point. Copying, same principle. Select these two. Now I'm selecting using this marquee method. So click and drag to the left from the right and you get the green window. This is the crossing window, so everything it touches is the selection set. Hit escape twice or drag from left to right, and this is the window method. So everything that I overlap now completely gets selected, not just things I touch. Okay, so you've got that method, you've got this method. You can also individually pick. That's another method. So you can do a combination of all. If you press the shift key, then you deselect. Okay, so depending on which way you go. Rotate, then you've got some tools for rotation. I'll select this object, choose my rotate tool, pick a rotation point. So I click this corner, I get to rotate it. There are other things that we'll cover later on. These are to do with referencing when you rotate and referencing when you scale. Mirroring, select an object and then hit enter because I've just chosen the tool first. Then it's asking for a mirror plane, so if I click vertically down, it's going to mirror it based on its distance from the line. If I then move my mirror plane, it's going to base it on its distance and the angle that it's mirroring against. Okay, so you don't have to do a full line mirror, just vertically up a little bit, vertically down a little bit, whichever way, it doesn't make any difference. And then it asks you, do you want to erase the source object? No is the default response, so that's that. We've now got grips. If I select an object, I've got grips on the corners and I've got grips at the midpoints. This is a polyline, so I could stretch this out, hover over that bit, track down. So I've now lined this up with that. I could take this up, hover over the midpoint, track back. I've moved that to that point. Move this up and down. Again, use the tracking. Very, very useful facility. Other things you can do with grips. If I was to pick this hot grip point and stretch this out, I could stretch that to there. I could stretch that to there if I wanted. Alternatively, the first mode is the stretch mode. If I tap the spacebar, the second mode is to pick it up. The third mode is to rotate. I'm just keep tapping the spacebar. Fourth mode is to scale. Fifth mode is to mirror. Sixth mode goes back to the original. So stretch, move, rotate, scale, mirror, back to stretch. Very, very useful, and you can do it with more than one object. So I've got those both selected. Click on this. I can move them both or rotate them both. You can also link this in with the copy command. So as I'm in the middle of rotating, right click, copy, and then click, 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 and I made a copy of that as well. Okay, so nice little tricks that you can do with your drawing. What else shall we finish off with? The trim, fillet and trim. These are nice ones. I've put a lot of tutorials together to explain how these work, but there's two trim methods. If I just draw a couple of quick lines there and then there. There's the random pruning method. So if I chose the trim tool and it says select objects or select all. Now if I hit enter or right click, then I've selected all, and then the trim tool allows me just to trim random bits, and providing it's got something I can trim it to, then it'll remove that segment. Okay, so that's fair enough. The alternative to that is if I wanted maybe to trim an object through all this to these two lines. So I've got this object, I've drawn it from there to there. Now I want to trim this object. I want to trim all these bits out, and I just want to keep that bit and that bit for whatever reason. So I choose the trim method and then select the object I want to trim to and select the other object I want to trim to, then hit enter and then click on this bit, and that chops it right out between these two lines. And that'll go for anything that spans either of those lines or both those lines. Okay, I'm trimming to this line and I'm trimming to this line. Anything that's spanning the whole thing gets chopped out completely. Otherwise, it's objects that are intersecting this line. Okay, so that's the two trim methods. Fillet and chamfer live together. Filleting is rounding, chamfering is angling. So fillet, select the first object or, and we get the down arrow. So that's that symbol you see next to the or. It's the key, the down pointing arrow key. Radius, and I'll set a radius of 10 mil. So 10 and enter, and then I can choose this line and this line, and that rounds that corner off to an angle of 10 mil. I can then hit enter to call up the previous command and hit the down arrow again and go multiple this time. So I'm going this one and this one, so I'm not having to do it each time. So I'm now trimming multiple options. If I wanted to choose the polyline method, I'd trim them all out in one go. So, or fillet them all out in one go. So fillet, it's already got my setting of 10 mil. So if I just drag that up a bit, you can see it's already set the radius of 10 mil. But I want to hit the down arrow and go polyline. And then that's going to do it all. And I'm not 100% certain, I'll try this out, whether I can do a multiple polyline, but let's try enter, down arrow, polyline, down arrow. No, just gives me the radius option, so I can only do one at a time. And notice it's going to default back to the original method, which is just one hit at a time. You have to keep going in. Right click is another option. You don't have to hit the down arrow, but right click will give you all those options as well. Okay, chamfering is just you choose two angles and then that's that done. So I think that's more than enough to get you started. There are lots of tutorials that we'll be working through. So for now, you consider yourselves caught up, and we'll move on to the drawings.